Welcome back, everyone. I am the Depressed Dior, and this is Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 7. Alright, before I dive into this, anyone that's familiar with Apex knows there's 4 different time slots that you can do these matches in on Saturdays and Sundays. Usually I do the one that's around midday, but this one I was staying up late because I was, well, playing games and been busy with work. And I was like, well, I'm already up late, so let's try this early, crack of dawn time slot and see what sort of opponents I run into. And so that's what this match is. So as for the box itself, it has a standard 2 tank, 4 healer setup. It has a little bit of a mix of a few assassins and some decent single targets with some AoE debuff nonsense. So kind of a mix, which boxes are generally easier to deal with because I can kind of control what sort of things I want to deal with. A few things, of course, to note is some faces we don't see very often. There's Lanford down here, and then of course we got Lucia. Lucia's gotten a little bit better with her exclusive weapon, but unfortunately she's just not in the meta for a lot of people for tank wise, and I can't use her because of her factions, and she lacks a faction buff. So yeah. Anyway, first things I went ahead and banned was Omega. I did not want to deal with the assassins. Omega is just ridiculous now that he has his 3C. Sigma here, now that he has SP, with his buff where he can increase his counterattack damage, he's a lot harder to deal with as well for me. So my goal is to get rid of both the assassins and then kind of play it by ear. I was a little concerned about Lanford, or not Lanford. Yes, Lanford. Sorry, I was mousing over the wrong image. Oh yeah, speaking of, there's Rainforest. We don't see him very often anymore. But Lanford I was actually concerned about because Lanford usually is infantry whenever I've fought him in the past. And usually his gimmick was, do chivalry, run up and kill Freya. So I was playing kind of thinking that was going to be the case if Lanford was added in. Anyway, my opponent banned Hilda, as I mentioned in previous videos. Banning Hilda tends to limit my options quite a bit, so it's kind of good practice to get that in. My opponent opened with picking TRS, which told me pretty much everything I needed to know, because there's literally no reason to pick a healer at this point. He had four healers still. I hadn't banned any of them. He was either going to be going very ultra defensive tank, because obviously TRS has that talent, but probably the real reason he originally went with TRS was for attack blessing, and that led me to believe he was going to try to focus on single targets. So with that in mind, I went ahead and banned their assassin, and I went ahead and banned their Landius, since the only other tank is Lucia, and Lucia doesn't even have a faction buff, and Lucia actually has trouble guarding against magic. I figured this was actually a really good opportunity since I rely heavily on long-range bombardment spells. Alright, so my other tank was taken out, so I went ahead and got Freya. They banned 2 of my healers. I was kind of okay with it at this point. They take a Lucia, which was perfect. I was hoping to bait my opponent to pick up a tank, so I was completely okay with that. I think he probably would have picked a tank anyway, even if I hadn't banned Landius, because obviously there was only 2 tanks, and I could have banned both eventually. But I figured at least giving some control over this and just having some control over what tank he could pick, I think was kind of important. In any case, went ahead and banned AoE. There was a kind of a wide range of AoE to pick from. Got rid of Lycoris because she can also pseudo as a healer, and also she does all that terrain nonsense. And then I got rid of Rainforest because if you let Rainforest go with his 3C and get a bunch of stacks and act again and all that nonsense, he can really shred your group, and he tends to be a infantry as well, which tends to shred Freya. So kind of okay with getting rid of him. Now, despite losing 2 of my healers, well, 2 of my 4 primary healers, I went ahead and went Tensei Jessica. Tensei Jessica, of course, has a little bit of passive healing with her holy spells. But I also wanted to get this early so I can ensure that I have access to teleports and do some shenanigans with that. So my opponent didn't go after any of my other healers, instead went straight for my assassin and Naomi. Despite not having a faction buff for Naomi, I'm pretty sure my opponent was a bit concerned about raw magic damage, so probably taking out Naomi makes sense in a way. He then again, I would if that was my concern, I would probably go young Jessica before Naomi. But I don't know. Either way, they were kind of screwed because obviously I had access to an attack buff through Tensei Jessica with her single target strengthen. Anyway, Lanford. Like I mentioned before, I assumed this Lanford was infantry. As you can see, that is incorrect. He is cavalry. So I don't find this out until much later. Now, obviously, the reason to pick Lanford is to get the faction buff, so you can actually faction buff Lucia, so I was completely okay with that. So with that in mind, I was like, alright, well, I'll go ahead and get rid of Leon, because I didn't want to deal with any of the shuffling that Leon's 3C does. Leon himself is not going to do much against Freya, but his 3C can be very, very annoying. And then Gizarov, obviously he does AoE, he has a pet that does AoE, and then of course his pet can be very annoying, and then if he dies, he spawns a pet. Like all that, I was like, I'm not going to deal with that junk. He's gone. Alright, went with Marielle. So I haven't actually grabbed any primary healers yet. I've been grabbing characters that can do damage and possibly do a little off healing, because at this point I'm not really being threatened damage-wise. I mean, Lanford's a little dangerous, but if I can outrange him, I'll win. And there's not much left in the form of AoE, so I'm not too concerned about AoE debuff nonsense. So, it looks like they banned... Yeah, so they went ahead and banned my Lycoris and went ahead and got rid of my Illustrial. At this point, my only primary healer that's left is Florentia. Unfortunately, Florentia does not have a faction buff, so her strategies are going to be a lot limited. I won't be able to restore them as easily. He went ahead and grabbed Bozel at this point. At this point, I mean, his options were either grab another healer or grab AoE. So he grabbed Bozel. I got rid of the rest of his AoE. And went ahead and grabbed Florentia at this point. Also, Florentia gave me the option of doing mass strengthen if I need to free up a slot for Tensei Jessica if I needed it. I was definitely torn on whether or not I wanted to grab Florentia at all, because obviously the two big threats here is just going to be Lanford and Bozel. I'm not too concerned about Lucia, and obviously healers are not going to do much, so Patseer could have been a good option, but I really wanted to make sure I at least had some flexibility on my options, so I grabbed Florentia. Also, I really wanted the Act again. Even though I'm only going to be able to do it once, once will be enough in most of these fights. So, unfortunately, they went and banned my rest of my casters, leaving me with either Shaltir or Toa. Both are okay options, to be honest, but I was under the assumption that Lanford was going to be infantry, so I figured Shaltir was not going to do as well. So I was going to go ahead and go with Toa here. They take a Rosenseal, not a big deal. Honestly, Florentia probably would have been a better pick, because faction buff would have given more strategies. But Rosenseal plus TRS, the crystal healing with TRS's talent pretty much ensures that if I don't one-shot them, they're going to heal back to near full or full if I don't kill in one shot. Alright, so we'll talk a little bit about our opponents. Give me a moment. Alright, so standard Rosenseal, well, I won't say standard. Pretty much primary healing Rosenseal, but no AoE crystal healing, which is kind of weird. Went with Miracle, which I'm assuming is just for the damage reduction. In all honesty, I probably would have dropped Crystal Ward and taken the AoE crystal healing instead, because Crystal Ward itself is not going to be a big deal. Obviously, her crystal barriers are going to be practically worthless in most cases here, because I'm not going to do any debuffs. Lanford here. Now, Lanford was weird. This is when I was like, oh, he's Cav. He's also using Mechanical Knights, which are not very useful on this map, because there's no actual terrain for him to actually get the extra moves on. Ace Tactics, obviously, he needed to take a faction buff, else the tank literally would have no buffs. Chivalry, and then Mind's Eye. So this is kind of weird. Chivalry is kind of a go. Any character that gets Chivalry usually will take Chivalry, even though it overlaps any sort of faction buff. The thing that's kind of weird is with the last 1 or 2 skill points that are left, went with Mind's Eye, which is a passive. It does help, but he doesn't have any attack skills. So Chivalry is going to give him the plus 30% attack buff, and then after that, it's just going to be a raw attack, and a raw attack is not going to kill most of the things here. So very, very, very strange. And the fact that Lanfer was cavalry kind of threw me off, which I'll talk about in a little bit. TRS Bolt Rangers, nothing too special here. Heal, Miracle, Attack, Blessing, the standard kit for support. Lucia here went Pirate Raiders, which is kind of her go-to new troop to go with. And then she's, of course, got Enduring Journey, her 3C, and then Hook. Hook was kind of the thing that stood out for Lucia as a tank, but on this map, hooking is practically worthless. Everything's so narrow that you're not going to be able to pull anything anywhere, unless of course it's like a flyer or something. Any ground troops that get pulled are going to either get caught up on these sky terrains, or they're going to get caught up on the stone pillars. So in either case, the hook's not going to do anything. If she's in range, she's either down here, which is just going to pull, you know, a little bit closer. If she's down here, there's not enough room to actually do any pulling. And then up here, if she's pulling from here to here, I mean, in that case, I'm already trapping her in the corner, or trapping my opponent in the corner at that point, and the mist will get them. And then last thing, of course, is Bozal. No faction buff, all debuffs. So Seal, Earthquake, Black Hole. And he went with Crystal Warlocks, so he's definitely not going to be doing much single target damage. So as far as the attack blessing is concerned, the only targets that can really get benefit from it is Lanford and Lucia, and neither of them have any sort of attack skills. So it's a weird box. So, oh yeah, I didn't really go over my stuff. There's not too much I need to go over, but I will point out a couple of things. Obviously, my opponent is opening with their 3C. So, so the reason why I said it threw me off a little bit about Lanford being Cav instead of infantry is I was under the assumption that it was going to be infantry, so I didn't take my Phalanx, I took Redeemers, which in hindsight seemed to work out okay anyway. Redeemers do have damage reduction if you have full health. They also have damage reduction just by themselves, so usually the first hit while they're at 100% is just going to do practically no damage. Standard Toa, Light of Genesis, I went ahead and dropped her. I dropped her a single target attack and it's replaced it with Strengthen. That way I can buff Marielle. Florentia standard kit with heal. Marielle's of course standard kit. I went Zealots just simply because again I was under the assumption that Lanford was going to be infantry. So my only other good troops besides Zealot was going to be Amazon champions. I might actually have a good infantry choice for her, but I don't remember if she does or not. I'm so used to never using infantry troops because I used to never train them that I just default to either, you know, their holy unit, mage, or whatever. Anyway, so I went ahead and moved up with Marielle. One thing to point out is one of the first things that happened was Rose and Seal got a 10U mobility onto Bozal. One of the first things I was doing is counting steps, and now that Bozal has all this extra movement, it's guaranteed that he's going to be able to reach me and AoE me however he wants. So I pretty much played this round trying to wait to see what Bozal does for the first round, because I do have some shenanigans that allow me to get to him, depending on what my opponent does. If my opponent hangs Bozal back, I can't reach him, but if he moves forward even a little bit, I should be able to reach him. Alright. I went ahead and moved Toa to the center here, just simply because it was pretty much out of range of everything except for Bozal. Went ahead and got the faction buff up and running. At this point I got all the information I needed. Bozal moved forward. Now he's of course being covered by guard, and Marielle can't reach on her own, but I do have teleport and an act again. So with that combination I should be able to reach. The only thing is if I use teleport I can't use strengthen in the same round. So if I do send Marielle, it's going to be with minimum buffs. So I went into strategic regroup, mainly just to get a buff onto Marielle. Every buff that's on Marielle makes the Zealot stronger. So I was like, well, at least have one buff. That'll help a little bit. I don't know if my opponent noticed what was going to happen, so I went ahead and put a Miracle. And at this point I was like, alright, well I gave you your act again, here's your teleport. Now one thing to note is the aura that the 3C does actually hinders mobility quite a bit. I've completely forgot about that from Lucia. But I was right next to Bozal, so I was going to be able to get the attack anyway. Got an extra action. I went ahead and put Strengthen on Florentia just because I could. And there you go. So time to do the usual Marielle combo. This attack's being guarded. I removed 4 buffs, 3 of it from the skill, and then 1 from the Mjolnir that she's equipped with. So it did a little bit of damage, not a lot, but it did everything I needed. It's going to remove the, was it Conviction or whatever it is? I never remember what it's called. And she also has plus 20% damage, and she bypasses guard, and she gets to refresh her skills. So with all that, I was able to use, even without an attack buff, I was able to shred Bozil. And then I removed like 5 more buffs from Alucia there. So at this point, Alucia actually has like 1 buff. I think she only has like Crystal Healing, and that's it. So unfortunately, even at full health, I was not going to be able to survive a Langrisser raw hit. My Marielle is super squishy, and she just doesn't have a lot of HP. Now, the extra action I got earlier from doing the teleport made it so I had 2 stacks of her talent. So with that, I was able to get 4 range with lights with her 3C. Obviously, she has that staff that expands her range. So with Light's Embrace, also since I debuffed all the buffs that Alucia had except for like 3 of them, Langrisser was outside of guard range at that point, so I was able to just finish him off. So at that point, my opponent is 1 tank and 2 healers. Literally nothing. Alucia will not be able to pierce through Freya. Neither of these casters will be able to get through Freya's Redeemers, so it's going to be pretty safe. So at this point, my goal is just to take the center and see if I can trap him. So actually, one thing I guess to note, both Rosenseal and Tiaras have Miracle. That is redundant. So kind of unnecessary. So obviously I was trying to make sure I get the 6 tiles in the center, or at least the 4 tiles in the center since they have no flyers. So getting guard buff up. I'm not really too concerned about anything. My opponent attacks. Yeah. It's what you expect. Alright. So, since Florentia doesn't have a faction buff, I can only get strategies from kills. So she only has 2 from the 2 kills I got. I used the 5 she started with the act again already. Moved in just to get a regular attack in, just to soften her up. I went ahead and went with Stoicism. Like, I was playing this super safe. Stoicism makes it so anyone within the aura gets plus 15% defense on top of everything else. So I was pretty much ensuring I was as tanky as possible, just in case Alucia surprises me. Like, I haven't fought Alucia in a long time, so I wasn't sure. I mean, with a regular attack, I don't see her actually taking out Freya. Also, even if she did take out Freya, I mean, as long as I don't have a debuff on her, she'll self-res thanks to Redeemers. So I'm at full health. So that's with Attack Blessing, regular attack. So it did okay damage, but it's not gonna kill. And I'm able to do heal. I can use one of my strategies to do battle support, and I'm back to full. And at this point, I've trapped my opponent. The only catch, of course, is right now I only have 1 turn left on the guard buff. So I'm gonna have to eventually move Florentia away because I won't be able to protect her. So one thing I noted was, like, my opponent doesn't have a guard to buff up, so Rosenseal's out of range. I one-shot her. I one-shot her with just a regular attack. And then I went ahead and just finished her off with a... I did Supremacy Strike. That was way overkill. I could have just used a regular attack. But I'm so used to fighting like Juggler, who's an aquatic tank as well, that I wasn't really... I didn't believe Toa was going to be able to do much against Alucia, even without her buffs, because she's in water all the time. So I was okay with just wasting her 3C on Rosenseal there. Now we're about to hit the other weakness that Alucia has. So, like I said, playing this super safe, just taking my time. And Yeah, Lucia's 3C only guards physical by default. The only time she can guard, Lucia can guard magic is through her 3C, which will only happen if she's in water. Or not through her 3C, through her exclusive weapon, which will only happen when she is in water. And as you can see, at that point there was only one tank left. I could have probably ganged up her like right then and there, but I went ahead and, like I said, I was playing it pretty safe. It was really early in the morning. I shouldn't have been awake at the time. So I was just making sure I didn't mess anything up. At that point, though, I would have to try really hard to actually lose the fight. So I fell back with Freya, did the faction buff, and then of course my opponent gave up, as you can see. So due to so this kind of, I guess, points out how the problems with Lucia. She couldn't guard against anything I threw at her. Langford tanked more damage than Lucia in this case. Actually, everyone tanked more damage than Lucia in this case, just simply because Lucia couldn't guard anything. It was kind of rough. And honestly, if she didn't have fixed immunity, she probably would have died. I would have probably attacked her soon after she after she tried attacking Freya, but she did have fixed immunity and she had same troops, so the thorns that Freya had couldn't bypass immunity. But yeah, as you can see, just I got the initiative on my opponent. I took out Bozel. The moment I took out Bozel, the match was over. Langford by himself is not going to kill anything, especially with the kit he had. I'm wondering if he's even fully built, because he only had 5 skill points worth of skills. He could have, if he had at least partially awakened, he would at least have 2 skill points left. So he could have actually grabbed like an actual good attack instead of a weird passive. So I don't know. In any case, you can see who did most of the work. Obviously, it was Tensei Jessica, but Marielle got the ball rolling. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. I think this upcoming week there'll be a summon video for Sissy White. I don't intend on using her anytime soon. I won't consider using her until the new tank comes out for Princess Faction. But she's actually a really interesting character. I'll talk more about her once I hopefully get her. So I am Theta Prestio. This was Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 7. And just to show where my ranking's at, as you can see, still in the beginnings of Gold 3. But anyway, see you guys next time.